Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for the invitation to be here. Glad to be here. My name is Justin Heslinga. I'm the Conservation Director here at the Land Conservancy, and this is Rory. So I'm going to be talking first a little bit about just laying some of the context of who is the Land Conservancy, what do we do, some of the history. We have a long history working in the Saugatuck-Douglas area. Even though this slideshow says Saugatuck, we mean Douglas too. We'll be inclusive. And then, so I'll talk about a few of the ways that we've been able to conserve some of these natural areas here in the area, and then Rory's going to be talking about kind of what's next, some exciting projects we have here locally on the horizon. So just to begin with, the Land Conservancy of West Michigan, we are a independent nonprofit organization. We serve parts of 8 counties here in Michigan. I'll throw up a map in just a minute. And as was just mentioned, this is our 50th anniversary. So we've been around since 1976. And so we're doing a little bit of hoopla around that this year. We've got some cool events and stuff coming up. Catch one of our staff afterwards and they can tell you about it. We've got some information up here as well. But our mission is to conserve ecologically critical land here in West Michigan. We do that in a variety of ways, really 3 main tools that we use to do that. The first one is through conservation easements or conservation agreements. This is where we work with private landowners that have natural land to protect that land, place certain restrictions in terms of use and development, so we make sure that that land stays in a natural state forever. That land stays in private hands. Those landowners can use the land, they can harvest timber, they can hunt, they can fish, they can do all manner of things, but the natural environment will stay in that state forever. Even if that landowner then sells the property, those are perpetual agreements that run with the land. And so we do a lot of work with those private landowners across our service area. The second way that we work is by acquiring land outright, either through purchase or donation or a combination, where we then own that land. We manage that for habitat quality as well as for public access. And these are our nature preserves. And that's a lot of the work that I do, is working with our team to manage those preserves, again, for that ecological integrity, a lot of habitat restoration, things like that. But also we have nearly 30 miles of trails that run in those properties. We have 20 nature preserves across our service area. The third way we work is through partnering with other organizations to protect land that eventually stays in those kind of third-party hands. So we work a lot with local units of government, municipalities, townships, counties, DNR, as well as other organizations like other nonprofit groups to protect land. Our involvement in those projects takes on a variety of forms, and that's really where we're going to be focused today. As a couple of, I'll be talking a little bit about some of the community conservation projects that we've done here in the Saugatuck-Douglas area, and then Rory's going to be talking about kind of where we're going next with some of these community projects. So just a quick map here, just to orient folks. This is a map of the area that we work, so parts of 8 counties. Our service area is essentially Saugatuck here where we are, north to Ludington, and then 1 tier of counties inland. And across that, we've protected over 13,000 acres. That number is a little bit outdated. I think it's a bit higher. We've protected a couple properties since this map was out, but you get the idea. We're pretty scattered all over the place. What I love about West Michigan and kind of our service area in particular is just the diversity of habitats that we are blessed with having in this area. I mean, obviously we're here on the lakeshore, just, yeah.
Could you keep your voice up a little bit more? You sometimes drop it down.
I would love to project a little bit more. Thank you. Yes, so across our service area, we've protected over 13,000 acres, and the diversity of those habitats is what really impresses me. So obviously here on the lakeshore, stunning views, the shoreline, the dunes, that's, I mean, here in Saugatuck, just richly blessed. But if you go inside, inland a little bit, you get some of those prairies, those oak savannas, those oak forests, and then you get up north to in Newaygo and Oceana and Muskegon counties, and you have these big tracts of forest and rivers like the Pere Marquette, and they each have their own kind of ecologies and natural histories associated with them. And so it really is a joy to be working in this space, and I think my colleagues would agree, and hopefully you agree. If you're from West Michigan or have been living in this area for a time, this is really unique. We live in a special place. And so there's a couple, I just want to highlight a couple projects that the Land Conservancy has been involved with here in the area that kind of highlight those, what's unique about our ecology, what's unique about our community. So I'll just throw in kind of a zoomed in map of the previous map here. This is showing a few of the conservation projects that we've done here in the Saugatuck area. So we have 7 conservation easements that we've done, over 350 acres in total. Those are marked by the red stars on there. They're private properties, so didn't want to put up the boundaries there, but those are kind of the locations of those. The one unique one is this one, though, that I will point out, the one kind of in the top center, and that is Heiser Farm Park. So that's one of the few conservation easements that we have on public land. So that's a Laketon Township Park. If you haven't been out there, kind of an interesting place, some old blueberry fields at the front end, but then some really magnificent woods in the back. We have a couple of nature preserves just north of us, Kelly Lake there, Dune Pines Preserve, and Castle Park Reserve. Rory, can you point to Dune Pines and Castle Park? Yeah, so two of our smallest nature preserves, but they are open to the public. They have a short trail system through there, so only 18 acres there. Again, that runs on the smaller side of our preserves, but nonetheless, we have that. And then 2 of the community conservation projects that we've been involved with, of course, here, Saugatuck State Park, and then Saugatuck Harbor Natural Area. Thanks, Rory. Appreciate you. Yeah, give this guy. So we're going to talk about the first one here, the Saugatuck Dunes State Park, and particularly a 300-acre addition to that park. That was really important for not only conservation in this area, but selfishly for the Land Conservancy of West Michigan. This project in 1976 was the reason that a group of volunteers came together, sat around a kitchen table, and said, hey, this 300 acres is extraordinarily special, and we need to protect it. And that those group of volunteers incorporated and formed the Natural Areas Conservancy of West Michigan. A decade or so later, they realized that was a big mouthful to say, so it got shortened to Land Conservancy of West Michigan. But that was the reason for kind of coming out of that environmental movement of the 1960s and 70s. Maybe some of you remember the Cuyahoga River on fire, right? That really captured the imagination and led to the rise of the environmental movement, the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, right? All of this was happening at that time, and this group of volunteers, local citizens, thought this was a special place and came together. So a couple of really important people, Patty Burkholtz, who some of you may remember, she was a local legend, a local hero, right? She got her start in politics as a township trustee here in Saugatuck, later went on to serve in Allegan County as treasurer, then in the Michigan State Senate, and she was a driving force behind protecting this property. And so that was, this took over a decade in the making of negotiations, of community organizing, of grassroots effort, and that area was finally secured and dedicated in 1988 as a natural area. So that designation is important too, that natural area. So originally, when the talks were going on with DNR to incorporate this into the state park, the DNR had envisioned this as a kind of a high-use recreation area. So think Silver Lake, dune, buggies all over the place. And Patty and colleagues at the time saw that as a great irony. What if we were to protect this land and then give it to the DNR, and then it would just be the habitat would be completely obliterated by ORV use. So that's part of what took many years of this project to convince the DNR to get them on board with protecting the natural habitat. Yes, still opening that up for human use and human enjoyment, but in a much gentler way. And so this was originally called the Saugatuck Dunes Natural Area, and it was renamed in 2010 to honor Patty and her work, which is a really cool legacy. So there's Patty actually in the corner hiding behind, this is Molly Bradshaw, who is another person locally who was instrumental. Thank you, Rory. My arms aren't long enough. Also very instrumental in this project. And then Al Gebbin is this gentleman right here, who's standing next to the sign. He was a local ecologist and botanist, a professor at Calvin College, who was also very much involved in this project. So it took a lot of people, a lot of time, over a decade to get this project done.
One of them is sitting here, and his name is David Swan, and he's right over there.
Excellent. Thank you for coming, David. We appreciate your work. And so we've talked a little bit about the transaction, but what this does is it protects 300 acres of critical dune habitat, including some endangered species. The one I'm showing here on the picture is pitcher's thistle. This is a Great Lakes endemic species, which means it occurs nowhere else on Earth but Great Lakes shorelines, particularly Lake Michigan. It sneaks into Lake Huron a little bit, but the Lake Michigan shoreline is where this guy thrives. Really interesting kind of life history to the species, but besides sort of this like alien Dr. Seussian look, it kind of needs shifting sands, right? It doesn't like it when it's like super disturbed and open, and when those dunes get really established with dune grasses and things like that, it doesn't like that. It likes that Goldilocks zone in between. It needs that. And that's really one of the markers of healthy dune systems, is the ability for that sand to shift around, the vegetation to move around with the wind and the waves and things like that. And when we are able to protect things on the order of 300, multiple hundreds of acres, we can allow some of those landscape processes to play out unimpeded. Yeah?
Say the name of that again.
Pitcher's thistle.
Pitcher's
Like a pitcher, or is that the same spelling as pitcher? Yeah, pitcher or pitcher, yeah. Pitcher's thistle, it's named after Zena Pitcher, who was a botanist actually out of the Ann Arbor area. There's a road in Ann Arbor called Zena Pitcher Avenue, named after, not too many roads are named after botanists, but that's pretty cool. And of course, this area is open to the public, as I mentioned too, over 5 miles of hiking trails for folks to enjoy. So that's kind of the first project I wanted to highlight. Moving on now, about 20 years later, now to Saugatuck Harbor Natural Area. And now, David, you could be giving the talk on this one, but this one started, really talks began in 1998 between the Land Conservancy and the city of Saugatuck. And this was a very complex transaction, a lot of moving parts with previous owners and some estranged family members claiming interests in the property, and then out-of-state oil barons and high-powered lawyers from Chicago getting involved. And so this is an extraordinarily complex transaction, took a very long time to do, and it wouldn't be able to be done without the help of many, many partners. City of Saugatuck, DNR was involved via the trust fund, Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund, and the Nature Conservancy was instrumental along the way, as well as the Saugatuck Dunes Coastal Alliance. So again, appreciative of the local efforts. These projects don't happen if, you know, an organization like the Land Conservancy comes in and we're going to make a natural area. It simply doesn't happen, right? These are community efforts. These are grassroots efforts, and so we very much appreciate that community support. So formally purchased by the Land Conservancy in 2009, and the intent was always to transfer it to the city of Saugatuck, which happened in 2011. And then what was neat about this project too is that there was a fund established for the continued maintenance and perpetual stewardship of that property too, which is held by the Holland Community Foundation that the city is able to use for maintenance and stewardship. This is a cool picture. This is Patty's showing up again. This is her taking a sledgehammer to one of the signs that was posted on the property after this became public. So I'm not sure why they're wearing leis in the picture, but that must have been the theme of the party. That's pretty cool. But more remarkable habitat here. 171 acres of critical dunes, a bit different than the Saugatuck Dunes natural area, and because this includes some really unique wetland features. So it kind of backs up to Oxbow Lagoon, which is a Great Lakes coastal marsh, which is a globally imperiled ecosystem. And then these dark splotches in here that you can see on the photos, those are called interdunal wetlands. And again, another globally rare ecosystem type. The folks down there that you can kind of make out are from a research team from Hope College who's been doing research on those ecosystems for a number of years. There's been other research teams in there as well, poking around and publishing some really interesting work out of those studies because it is such a ecological anomaly. It's a really interesting resource. And again, that's managed by the city of Saugatuck. We've been consulting with them. We recently helped them to update the 10-year management plan for this property to kind of set them on good footing going forward. So just to look ahead a little bit, a couple examples of properties or projects that we've worked on, but our work going forward is guided by a strategic conservation plan that we and our partners developed a few years ago now. And really this was designed to help us learn what are the places in West Michigan that are most important to protect, right? We think we've been protecting some pretty cool lands, but are we, right? And where do we go from there? And so this was a multi-year project where we really wanted to rely on the data, the science, what it was telling us. And so we looked at spatial data across our entire service area, things like habitat quality, right? Where are the areas with the most biodiversity, the rare ecosystems, endangered species, things like that? Where are the connections between those areas, or are there lands that have potential to form connections so species and ecosystems can shift and move, right? Wetlands and water was also a really important part of this too, right? A biodiversity congregates around water, right? Water is so essential for virtually every ecosystem function we can think of, not to mention the recreational and aesthetic value. And then the fourth kind of component we looked at, which was a little bit newer for us, was this concept of resilience. What are the lands that are going to be most resilient to changes in the future, right? We know things are changing, they're changing rapidly. I could spend a whole hour talking about that little box down here alone. If you're interested in that, talk to me afterwards. But we basically layered those four things on top of each other, and we came up with that map that you see on the right. So just to orient you there, the orange are things that are properties that are already protected. So whether that's us, whether that's our partners, a lot of state and federal land is showing up there, Huron-Manistee National Forest and whatnot at the upper end of our service area. And then in between, maybe a little hard to see from where you're sitting, but the darker the green means higher conservation potential. And so we kind of looked at where those areas were clustered, and we came up with three main focal areas. One being to the north, the Big Forest and Wild Rivers region. Think of the Pere Marquette River, some of those large tracts, White River, large tracts of forest in between, where our strategy is really to kind of fill in some of those puzzle pieces around the national forest land. The Eastern Glacial Corridor, which is in eastern Kent County, is a really unique area as well. Talked about some of those prairies and oak forests before. That's where all this stuff happens, and this is really important for making north-south connections between some of our protected areas up here and down here. And then, of course, we have the Lake Michigan shoreline, which also emerged as a priority, and Saugatuck, of course, falls right into that. So just a little bit about our strategic goals and some of our general strategies here, right? This is a huge migratory corridor, of course, for birds, butterflies, species of all kinds. We're looking to sustain the habitat for rare species, things like pitcher's thistle, other species as well who use these shoreline habitats, and of course the scenic and recreational uses. So The tough thing about the shoreline, though, is many of the lands are either already protected or they're developed. There's not too many lands that are left kind of up for grabs, right? So what our task is to identify those and then work with local and state partners where it makes sense to help protect those. And we have a kind of a third strategy there, more focused on some of our conservation easement landowners who are seeing declines in their forest health. Things like hemlock woolly adelgid is really wreaking havoc on some of those forests, so working with those folks to make sure those forests stay forests and stay as healthy as possible. Just wanted to highlight that second bullet there because that's a great segue into Rory's talk. Working with those state and local partners. Again, these types of conservation projects are not possible without that local support. And so we're really leaning into this on our next little section of the presentation. So I'll invite Rory to come on up.
Thank you, Justin. My name is Rory Thibault. I'm the Land Partnerships Manager for the Land Conservancy of West Michigan. And I do really appreciate the segue into recognizing the local partnerships that are really critical to preserving and protecting these high quality natural areas in perpetuity, right? So it's a legacy commitment, and it's a way that we can remain committed to the partners that we've established over the course of the last 50 years so that those remain durable partnerships going forward. So one example of what a durable partnership has manifested into is one of a really exciting project that is underway, and I will be kind of speaking to a lot more in depth going forward. To kind of set the stage though, how did this project come along? Maybe you might be familiar with the title of this, perhaps with some of the local commercial record pieces. Maybe you're on our mailing list because you're a volunteer. But as Justin had pointed out, we have the benefit of kind of taking this large regional perspective. We're evaluating habitat quality, potential for protection at a really large scale. But where does that land on those individual properties where protection in perpetuity is a timely request? We know that there's development pressure, we know that there's habitat degradation, but we can't necessarily be eyes and ears everywhere, so we rely on our local partners to let us know of opportunities where our unique expertise, our way that we're organized can be leveraged to effectuate some really great and lasting change. And such was the case with Riverside Park. So to be a little bit more specific, we're going to travel up the Kalamazoo River from the river mouth down here, and we're going to go just east of the interstate. There's about 2,200 feet of river frontage on the Kalamazoo, 119 acres, a significant portion of that both being the wetlands in the middle of the river that has frequent inundation, another 30-40 acres of upland, and some really beautiful forested property that has a ravine running through it. This is what it looks like a little bit more specifically in case you couldn't orient yourself. But really it's a unique opportunity in one of the last unprotected lands of such scale within the township of Saugatuck. So that partnership is what I'm going to be speaking to a little bit more specifically. But once again, kind of to Justin's point, how are we looking at this? Where does our regional perspective, our strategic conservation plan, which kind of takes holistically the habitat quality across 8 counties, where does that intersect with the values and aspirations of the local units, of the local people, of the community itself? So the Saugatuck Township itself had done really significant investments from the community perspective of passing a Parks and Trails millage in 2022, which I know had a significant amount of public support. They also had put together a strategic land protection and public access plan. So it's kind of a combination of those documents in addition to us recognizing on a regional perspective, hey, there's a really high potential for habitat conservation to occur here, and now there's local capacities, there's local expertise, and there's a mechanism, which I'll kind of speak to as well, to protect this property in perpetuity. This is kind of unique. I'll be kind of walking you through what this property actually consists of. This is a sneak peek in a sense. There's not a lot of folks that have been able to see this unless you're working for the DNR or DNR Trust Fund member or have been invited at some point in the past by the family themselves. But you can see that from our perspective, once again, kind of staying at that regional level, we see immediately across the river, Kalamazoo River to the north, is the township-owned River Bluff Park. Upstream a little bit further is Allegan State Game Area. As Justin had mentioned, we're already looking to aggregate on existing protected habitats. So Allegan State Game Area is one of those orange areas that we had mentioned on the previous map, that because it's already in state trust and in the public trust, protections that are immediately adjacent to that kind of allow the habitat that's already existing in those managed areas be able to kind of sustain themselves. It's we're better together, we're bigger together, as opposed to having really isolated pockets where either development pressures or invasive pressure, climate change, those sorts of things can really wreak havoc on really isolated populations. So seeing that township-owned property immediately across the river, Allegan State Game Area upstream, shows that this is a keyhole property that is ripe for protection. Looking back now, kind of further to the southwest portion of the property, you can see that the Douglas's Schultz Park and the dog park, the boat launch immediately to the west side of the interstate, and this is the east side. Obviously, it's not necessarily the most pristine property. It's hard to find those, but with restoration efforts as potential and capacity being there, some of this phragmite pressure that you're kind of seeing near the shoreline has the ability to be restored, right? It's still a significant amount of river frontage that, with the potential of development, suburban development pressure, it's zoned in a way that could have had close to 40 homes. That segmented shoreline as a result of that would make any future ideas of restoration nearly impossible. Now kind of going onto the site itself, this is a unique opportunity with the trust fund. Don't necessarily get too attached to too many of the structures. That's a requirement of the trust fund. But in a sustainability and a sustained sense, there will be community visioning about what the future of this property looks like in terms of additional recreational amenities and potential for reuse of the materials that are existing on site. It's worth mentioning, so 75% of the property is proposed to remain in really high quality natural areas with the potential for restoration. That remaining 25% is kind of oriented, so more recreational developments. Once again, not like huge amenity facilities or anything like that, but some of the assets that the community themselves has already expressed through the master planning process and in other public venues to have different play fields, just to have another sort of community asset. And that's where, the intersection between the work of the Land Conservancy, where we're kind of very habitat focused, we partner with organizations, the local municipalities, that can have more people-focused programming that's in the active recreation sense. So there's when we were out on a site visit with the DNR and the township manager, we had seen some sandhill cranes that were there as well. Gravel access, kind of providing a primary path into the park itself, or the potential park. Some really other beautiful habitat options, potential for restoration. River access, as Justin had mentioned, This is kind of just on the tail end of our Lake Michigan shoreline focal region, but part of that is really making sure that there's opportunities for access to the river itself within our protected areas. So this is from a schematic potential, and the DNR was very happy to hear about it, the ability to have a kayak launch so that people can access, the public can access the river in another sort of more naturalistic perspective rather than competing with the boat traffic that's at the boat launch. This is kind of walking back from that peninsula a little bit further into the heart of the property. As I'd mentioned, there's still obviously invasive pressure that's kind of everywhere in West Michigan, but it is thankfully scattered, few and far in between. So there's definitely opportunities for restoration improvement. We also know that congratulations to the region having some really exceptional cross-country runners. You know, the township had expressed, and in the master plan itself had, the community had demonstrated a desire for an actual home field running, cross-country running circuit. So that was something that was included in the application to the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund, with a stream obviously beyond, keeping that sort of quiet recreation, low impact development, but understanding that in order for people to become attached to a place, want to preserve it, want to protect it, want to volunteer with it, they have to be inspired by it and they have to be able to be out in it. So this is what kind of on the left side, what the current site plan looks like. And then on the right, what you're seeing is the conceptual future plan that was submitted to the trust fund. Obviously that itself is going to be up for community involvement through master planning going forward. And how many of you are familiar with the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund? Okay, let me zoom out a little bit. The Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund is also celebrating their 50th anniversary this year. It is an exceptional and unique program in the national landscape to have a state endowment for conservation and recreation lands. What they do is they take oil and gas leases, the revenue from those leases gets put into a state endowment fund, and every year they open up an application to local units of government to apply to that, to be able to have acquisition projects, so new land as public parks, or development projects, so improving those public parks and natural spaces. So with Saugatuck Township, last year in March, we had gotten an approach to see whether or not we wanted to support their application to the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund. We had already, had significant success with leveraging the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund for the projects that Justin had talked about. As in an effort to once again invest in this space and understand where the community was at, we saw an opportunity to help aggregate their efforts and leverage some independent fundraising to help close the gap. It's really an incredible program. It's highly competitive. But fast forward at the end of this last year, December was recommended for approval to be funded. So that's $2.5 million potentially from the state of Michigan, which was included in the big omnibus bill this last week that was passed in the State House. So it looks like that funding is actually able to be coming from the state. And then it's up to us as the local match. The township's millage as a result of that Parks and Recreation Plan provides a significant portion of that local match, and then we're fundraising to help close that gap.
Question.
So, yes.
On the last slide,
Can you, I know it's a proposed plan, but can you read just some of the titles of what's proposed?
Yes, so as I had mentioned, there's some active sort of play fields. I don't know if you're seeing.
the rectangle.
Yes. Rectangles in the center, and if you're seeing a cursor on the right, are some active play fields. There's potentials for boardwalks coming out into the Kalamazoo River. There's that boat launch that I was talking about on the north over here. And then, as I had mentioned, 75% of it is really meant to be in that high quality natural area and restoration. Yes?
That was one of 3 different plans that were created, right? And I know they are, at this point, they're kind of leaning away from the big ball field idea. They're hoping that the city will be able to fund ball fields over by the Community Church of Douglas, where they've bought the property. So perhaps this won't be ball fields, it'll be more natural land, and I think they are definitely more leaning towards the cross-country track. So this is by no means anything final that you're seeing up here, right?
Yes. No, and that's a, not to put too fine of a point on it, that's the amazing part of this entire process. It's not just us dictating those terms, it's not just the township that's dictating the terms, it's not the DNR, but rather it really requires community investment through public participation in the process of planning this. So when you see the Parks and Rec plan up, and when you see a public hearing for the sort of amenities that you want to see, please, by all means, that is your opportunity to voice and see what you want this public park to be. And for us, as the Land Conservancy, understanding where we can help inspire people to be connected into this, see obviously the conservation potential and making sure that these high quality natural areas are kept at their highest level, fostering the greatest amount of biodiversity. That's really that beautiful intersection between public, private, and philanthropic organizations and conservation organizations like ourselves. So how are we doing? As I had mentioned, the omnibus bill had passed through the Senate this last week, and land is not cheap. You all have probably seen your assessed and taxable values also raise over the course of many years. So the entire project is about $3.5 million total. We had come in to help the local match percentage to make the project more competitive, because I had mentioned the trust fund process is exceedingly competitive. They do have a lot of money that's available, but there's a lot of projects that are really demanding of it. So I'm happy to say that we are closing the gap. Our goal was to raise that last $200,000, and we've got about $75,000 left as a result of some really significant contributions from folks in the community, just as yourselves. The Rotary had pledged to support $25,000 as a matching campaign with some of the proceeds from the Venetian Fest, as well as another local family that has also provided a matching campaign as a one-to-one match. So if you've already donated, thank you so much. And if you have any other insights or desires, there's staff members around here as well. You can go to our website, you can talk to us, you can talk to our development manager, Han, in the back. There are some QR codes you can also scan to my immediate right. But yes, so that, I realized I had not shown exactly what that matching looks like. So a little over $1 million that was pledged as a local match, and then over 2.5 coming from the state, which is just an exceptional way to be better together.
Okay.